Dr. Olivia Walsh peered through the microscope, her eyes widening as the strange crystalline structure came into focus. The deep-sea sample she had collected from the Mariana Trench shouldn't contain anything like this. The organism, if that's what it was, seemed to shimmer with an internal light that defied explanation. "Sam, you need to see this," she called to her colleague without looking up. Dr. Sam Mitchell sighed, setting down his coffee mug. "Another strange coral formation?" he asked, crossing the small shipboard laboratory. "This isn't coral," Olivia said, stepping aside. "I've never seen anything like it." Sam leaned down to look, then straightened abruptly. "That's unusual." The specimen appeared to change as they watched, its crystal-like structures realigning slightly. Olivia connected a small electrode to the slide and applied a minimal current. The response was immediate. The entire organism pulsed with light. "It's responding to electricity," she whispered. "That's not normal for any deep-sea organism I've ever studied." Sam crossed his arms. "Could be some kind of bioluminescent defense mechanism. In a crystalline structure. That's not how bioluminescence works. And you know it." Olivia carefully removed the slide and placed it in a secure container. "We need to get this back to the main lab." 3 days later, in the coastal research facility of the Pacific Marine Biology Institute, Olivia worked alone. The midnight hours were her favorite, quiet and free from interruptions. She placed the specimen under a more powerful microscope and gasped. The organism had changed again. Now it appeared to have formed structures that resembled human cells, almost as if it were trying to mimic her own cellular pattern from previous contact. Olivia's phone rang, startling her. "Unknown number." "Dr. Walsh speaking," she answered cautiously. "Dr. Walsh, this is Agent Harris with the Department of Defense Research Division. We understand you've recovered an unusual specimen from the Mariana Trench." Olivia froze. "How do you know about that?" "My findings haven't been published." "We need to examine your specimen. I'll be at your lab tomorrow morning." Before she could protest, the line went dead. The next morning, Sam arrived to find Olivia pacing nervously. "Government agents coming here?" he asked after she explained. "That's concerning. They knew about the specimen, Sam. How could they possibly know?" Their conversation halted as the laboratory door opened. A man in a dark suit entered, tall, clean-cut, with the unmistakable bearing of government training. "Dr. Walsh, I'm Paul Harris." "The specimen is over here," Olivia said coldly, gesturing to the secure workstation. Paul approached the microscope and bent to look at the sample she had prepared. The moment his eyes focused on the crystalline structure, his entire body went rigid. He didn't blink, didn't breathe, just froze completely, as if turned to stone. "Agent Harris." Sam moved toward him cautiously. "Are you okay?" No response. Olivia touched Paul's shoulder. His skin felt ice-cold through his suit jacket. "Something's wrong," she said, checking his pulse. "He's alive, but it's like he's in some kind of shock." At that moment, the specimen pulsed with bright blue light, more intensely than before. As it did, Paul gasped and stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. It recognized me," he stammered, his face pale. "And I recognized it." "What are you talking about?" Olivia demanded. Paul's eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of fear and wonder. "Dr. Walsh, that thing in your microscope isn't from Earth. And this isn't the first time I've encountered it." The specimen pulsed again, and this time, they all heard it, a faint, rhythmic hum emanating from the tiny crystal structure, like a heartbeat seeking connection. "What do you mean it's not from Earth?" Olivia stared at Paul, who was still visibly shaken. "That's impossible." Paul straightened his tie, regaining his composure. "I need you both to sign these." He pulled 2 documents from his briefcase. They're standard non-disclosure agreements. Sam scoffed. "We're not signing anything until you explain what just happened." "Sign first, then I explain." Paul's voice was firm. "This is a matter of national security." 20 minutes later, After reluctantly signing the papers, Olivia and Sam sat across from Paul in the small conference room adjacent to the lab. "Your specimen," Paul began, "is the fourth we found globally. The first was discovered in the Arctic ice shelf 5 years ago, another in volcanic soil near Mount Fuji, a third in sediment from the Amazon basin, and now the ocean depths," Olivia whispered. "They're sampling different Earth environments." Paul nodded. "That's our theory too." "But why did you freeze up like that?" Sam asked. Paul's fingers tapped nervously on the table. "Because I was part of the Arctic recovery team. We were exposed to a larger version of this organism before containment protocols were established. Something about it changes you. Not visibly, not even detectably by our current medical technology, but it leaves a mark." "And it recognized you," Olivia concluded. "That's why you went rigid." "It was trying to connect," Paul said, "like finding an old friend in an unexpected place." Olivia's scientific mind raced with questions. Does it communicate? What does it want? How did it get here? "Those are exactly the questions we've been trying to answer," Paul replied, "which is why I'm here to bring you both in." "Bring us in." Sam looked skeptical. "To our research facility. The government has assembled a team of scientists studying these organisms. Your discovery completes the pattern we've been tracking." Olivia felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. "When do we leave?" "Now," Paul answered. 4 hours later, after a helicopter ride to a private airfield and a flight to an undisclosed location, Olivia and Sam were led through an underground complex that hummed with activity. Scientists in lab coats moved between workstations filled with advanced equipment. A tall woman with gray-streaked hair approached them. "I'm Director Elaine Carter. Welcome to Project Messenger." The facility was impressive. Cutting-edge technology, multiple research labs, and a central chamber housing 3 specimens identical to Olivia's, each in separate containment units. "We believe these organisms are scouts," Director Carter explained as they toured the facility. "Biological reconnaissance tools sent to assess our world. Each one found in distinctly different environments." "Sent by whom?" Sam asked. "That's what we're trying to figure out, but we do know they're attempting communication." Elaine led them to a monitoring station where screens displayed waveform patterns. "These are energy signatures from each specimen. They emit consistent patterns, like a language." "Or a beacon," Olivia suggested. "Exactly." Elaine nodded approvingly. "We've been recording these signals for months. They intensified 3 weeks ago, around the time your specimen entered Earth's atmosphere." "Entered?" Olivia's voice rose. "You mean you tracked it coming in from space? A meteor shower over the Pacific?" "We believe your specimen was inside one of those meteors." Elaine gestured to another screen showing trajectory paths. "We've been waiting for it to be found." "Why not retrieve it yourselves?" Sam asked. "We needed to see who it would reach out to," Paul interjected. "These organisms seem to be selective about human contact." Elaine turned to face them fully. "Dr. Walsh, Dr. Mitchell, what we're dealing with is first contact with an alien intelligence. One that seems to be studying us as carefully as we're studying them." As if responding to her words, the specimens in the containment units began to pulse in unison, their crystalline structures glowing brighter. "And now," Paul said quietly, "I think they're ready to talk to us." The next morning, Olivia woke to an urgent knocking on her temporary quarters door. She had barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities about the crystalline organisms. "Dr. Walsh, you need to come quickly," a young lab assistant said, breathing heavily. "The specimens are active." When Olivia arrived at the main lab, she found Sam, Paul, and Director Carter already gathered around a large monitoring station. The 4 specimens, including her own from the ocean, had been placed in a circular arrangement, each inside its containment unit. "What's happening?" Olivia asked, joining them. "Watch," Sam replied, pointing to the specimens. All 4 crystalline structures were pulsing with light, but not randomly. They followed a distinct pattern, 3 short pulses, 3 long, 3 short again. That's Morse code, Olivia realized. SOS. That's what we thought too, Director Carter said. But it's not distress they're signaling. They're simply using a pattern they know humans will recognize. Paul turned to a computer technician. Try the frequency we discussed. The technician nodded and adjusted some settings on a control panel. A low hum filled the room as radio waves were directed at the specimens at a specific frequency. The response was immediate. All 4 specimens changed color from blue to a deep purple and began emitting a complex series of light patterns. They're responding to 1420 MHz, Paul explained to Olivia and Sam. The hydrogen line, a frequency often discussed as one aliens might use for communication, since hydrogen is the most common element in the universe. We've been trying different frequencies for months, Director Carter added. This is the first clear response we've received. Dr. Linda Rice, the team's communication specialist, studied the scrolling data on her screen. These patterns are becoming more complex. I think they're trying to establish a communication protocol. For the next 3 hours, the team worked to decode the patterns. They fed various mathematical sequences to the specimens, which responded with increasingly sophisticated light displays. Finally, words appeared on Dr. Rice's screen. Recognition. HFY. Did they just write to us? Sam asked, disbelieving. Not exactly, Dr. Rice explained. We've been feeding our translation algorithm with the patterns, and it's starting to make sense of them. This is what our computer thinks they're saying. More text appeared. We are scouts. We explore. We learn. We prepare. Prepare for what? Director Carter asked aloud. The specimens pulsed again, and the translation followed. For CONTZ. For EXCHANGE. Olivia leaned forward. Are you a collective intelligence? Individual CELOs of Gigrahol. CEDs across stairs. Find viable environments. Initiate communication. Paul stepped closer to the containment units. The specimen from the Arctic, the one he had encountered years ago, pulsed more brightly than the others. Recognition. URL PTTRN. Familiar. Previous XCHANG incomplete. Everyone turned to Paul, who had gone pale. What does it mean by previous exchange? Director Carter demanded. Paul swallowed hard. During the Arctic expedition, before we established proper containment, I had direct contact with the organism. It did something to me. I had dreams for months afterward. Dreams I couldn't explain. The specimens pulsed again. Note DREMs. Communication ATMT. Neural interface NITATD, but incomplete. They were trying to talk to you through your dreams. Sam asked incredulously. It seems so, Paul whispered. Olivia studied the specimens thoughtfully. Why Paul? Why choose him specifically? The answer appeared almost immediately. Neural QMP. High dial. Toidwa. Receptive mind PTTRN. Bridge potential high. They're saying you're compatible, Olivia told Paul. That your brain is somehow receptive to their form of communication. Director Carter's expression hardened. Is this why you went rigid when you saw the specimen? You're already connected to them somehow. Before Paul could answer, all 4 specimens pulsed in perfect unison, casting the room in brilliant purple light. The translation appeared in large text. We have MESSAG of URGNCY. Danger approaches. Bridge must be completed. What danger? Director Carter demanded. But the specimens had gone dark, their energy apparently spent by the communication effort. I think, Paul said quietly, they want to use me to deliver their full message. The small conference room fell silent as Paul finished describing his experience in the Arctic. 5 years ago, his military unit had been dispatched to investigate an anomalous object detected beneath the ice. What they found changed everything. It wasn't a meteor, Paul explained, his voice low. Not exactly. It was a delivery system. About the size of a car, crystalline structure similar to our specimens but much larger. Director Carter leaned forward. Why wasn't this in your official report? Because the official report was classified beyond even your clearance level. Paul rubbed his temples. When we approached it, the structure opened, released a mist that several of us inhaled before we could get our masks on. Olivia's scientific curiosity overcame her apprehension. And that's when you were exposed. Paul nodded. 3 of us were affected. The other 2 developed severe neurological symptoms and were transferred to a specialized facility. I showed no immediate effects, so they kept me on active duty under monitoring. Until the dreams started, Sam guessed. Yes, Paul closed his eyes briefly. They weren't just dreams. They were information packets, images of stars I didn't recognize, mathematical equations I couldn't possibly understand when awake, and feelings, a sense of urgency mixed with curiosity. Director Carter tapped her tablet, bringing up the secure file. I've just received clearance to access the medical reports from your exposure. We need to know exactly what happened to you. Dr. Alan Fisher, the project's neurologist, entered the room carrying a portable scanning device. If you'll permit me, Agent Harris, I'd like to compare your neural patterns now to your baselines from before the Arctic incident. Paul agreed, and the doctor placed a thin band around his head. The device hummed softly as it worked. Remarkable, Dr. Fisher muttered, studying the results. Your neural pathways show subtle but significant restructuring, particularly in areas associated with pattern recognition and language processing. They were preparing him, Olivia realized, creating a human who could understand their communication. Dr. Fisher nodded. More than that, they've created additional neural connections, bridges between cognitive systems that don't normally interact. It's as if they were upgrading your brain's processing capabilities. Without my consent, Paul said, a hint of anger in his voice. Yet you never reported the dreams, Director Carter pointed out. Paul looked away. They didn't feel threatening. They felt important, like I was being entrusted with something precious. Olivia placed a gentle hand on his arm. Paul, you might be the key to understanding what they want. What this danger is they mentioned. Back in the lab, the specimens had remained dormant since their brief communication. Dr. Rice and her team worked tirelessly to analyze the patterns they had received. We've identified 157 distinct pattern elements, she reported. It's not just a simple code, it's a complex language with its own grammar and syntax. Sam studied the visual representation of the patterns on the main screen. There's something familiar about this structure. It reminds me of neural firing patterns. Dr. Fisher's eyes widened. That's it. They're not just sending code. They're sending thought patterns. Neural impulses translated into light. Olivia turned to Paul. That's why you recognized it instantly. Your brain was restructured to interpret these patterns automatically. Which explains why he went rigid, Dr. Fisher added. His brain was suddenly processing massive amounts of information, like a computer momentarily freezing when opening a huge file. Paul stood up and walked toward the containment units. As he approached, the specimens began to glow faintly. They sense you, Olivia whispered. More than that, Paul replied. They're waiting for me to remember something. He pressed his hands against his forehead. Something important about the stars. About visitors. About a warning. The Arctic specimen pulsed once, brightly, as if in confirmation. Director Carter stepped forward. Dr. Fisher, what would happen if we allowed controlled contact between Agent Harris and the specimens? Theoretically, it could complete the neural interface they attempted to establish 5 years ago, and potentially give us the full message they're trying to deliver, Olivia added. Paul stared at the glowing crystals. I'll do it, whatever they did to me. I think it was for this moment. The preparation for Paul's controlled contact with the specimens took 16 hours. The main laboratory had been transformed into something resembling both a medical facility and a communication center. These sensors will monitor your vital signs, Dr. Fisher explained as he attached small devices to Paul's temples and chest. If we detect any dangerous changes, we'll terminate the connection immediately. Paul sat in a specially designed chair at the center of the room. Around him, in a perfect circle, stood 4 containment units holding the specimens. The crystalline structures had been glowing steadily since he entered the room, as if anticipating what was to come. Olivia approached Paul with a concerned look. "You don't have to do this. We could find another way." "No," Paul replied firmly. "They chose me for a reason, and if there's really some danger coming, we need to know what it is." Director Carter addressed the room. "All personnel not essential to this procedure, please exit now. Remaining team members, take your positions." As the room cleared, only Olivia, Sam, Dr. Fisher, Dr. Rice, and Director Carter remained, each at their monitoring stations. The tension in the air was palpable. "Beginning connection procedure," Dr. Rice announced, typing commands into her console. The containment units opened simultaneously, exposing the crystalline specimens directly to the air. They immediately brightened, pulsing in a synchronized rhythm. "Paul, are you ready?" Director Carter asked. He nodded, gripping the armrests of his chair. "Do it." Dr. Fisher pressed a button, and a low-frequency sound filled the room, the same 1420 MHz frequency that had triggered the specimen's previous communication. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the specimens began to emit a fine, shimmering mist that drifted toward Paul. The mist surrounded him, sparkling like microscopic diamonds in sunlight. "Vital signs stable," Dr. Fisher reported, watching his monitors closely. Paul's eyes widened as the mist made contact with his skin. "It's cold, but not unpleasant." Suddenly, his back arched and his eyes rolled upward, showing only whites. "Paul." Olivia moved toward him, but Sam caught her arm. "Wait," he cautioned. "Look at the specimens." The 4 crystalline structures had begun to rotate, creating a vortex-like pattern of light that spiraled upward. The light connected with the mist surrounding Paul, forming a glowing cocoon around him. "His brain activity is off the charts," Dr. Fisher reported, staring at his screens in amazement. "But it's stable, organized chaos. His neural pathways are lighting up in patterns I've never seen before." Inside the light cocoon, Paul felt his consciousness expanding. Images flooded his mind: stars, planets, vast structures in space, and beings of pure energy. He saw a civilization that existed as points of light spread across thousands of galaxies, connected through some form of quantum entanglement. "They're not just scouts," Paul spoke, his voice eerily calm despite his trance-like state. "They're extensions of a vast collective consciousness. They've been watching Earth for centuries, sending microscopic observers to monitor our development." The light around Paul pulsed with each word, as if confirming his statements. "They call themselves the Luminous Assembly. They're a peaceful species that exists primarily as energy, using these crystalline forms to interact with physical matter." "What danger were they warning us about?" Director Carter asked. Paul's expression darkened. "Another species they call the Void Seekers, a race that consumes the energy of other civilizations. They've detected Void Seeker probes entering our solar system." The light around Paul shifted to a deep red hue. "The Luminous Assembly is offering us protection, a technological exchange. They can show us how to manipulate energy in ways our science hasn't imagined." Suddenly, one of the specimens, the one from the Arctic, floated upward from its containment unit. It hovered before Paul, then transformed, reshaping itself into a perfect sphere of brilliant light. As proof of their intentions, Paul continued, "They offer a demonstration." The sphere expanded, filling the room with golden light. Every electronic device sparked with sudden excess power. The lights brightened to blinding intensity. then normalized. Energy manipulation beyond our current understanding of physics, Olivia whispered in awe. Paul's eyes returned to normal as the mist began to recede. The specimens returned to their original forms, though they continued to pulse with light. "They want to help us," Paul said, his voice now his own again. "But we have to decide quickly. The Void Seekers are coming." 3 days after Paul's contact with the specimens, the underground facility buzzed with activity. Military personnel now outnumbered scientists, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Olivia stood at the observation window, watching as technicians in protective gear carefully studied the specimens. Since the contact event, the crystalline organisms had remained in an active state, pulsing with steady light. "They're waiting for our answer," she said as Sam joined her. "If there even is a they," Sam replied, his scientific skepticism evident. "We only have Paul's word for what he experienced." "You saw what happened in that room," Olivia countered. "The energy surge, the transformation. How do you explain that?" Before Sam could answer, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red warning lights flashed in the corridors. "All personnel report to the main conference room immediately," announced the overhead speaker system. The large conference room was packed when they arrived. Military officers occupied one side of the table, scientists the other. Director Carter stood at the head, her face grim. Beside her stood a stern-looking man in a general's uniform and an elegant woman in a gray business suit. For those who don't know them, this is General Frank Wilson and Dr. Nancy Reed from the National Security Council. Director Carter introduced. "They've been briefed on our situation." General Wilson wasted no time. "The President has been informed about these visitors. I'm here to assess the military applications of the technology they're offering." Dr. Reed nodded. "And I'm here to evaluate the diplomatic implications. If we're truly facing first contact with an alien civilization, we need to proceed carefully." Paul, who had been sitting quietly at the corner of the table, spoke up. "They're not offering weapons. They're offering protection. A shield against the Void Seekers. A shield we could potentially modify for other purposes," General Wilson countered. Olivia stood. "The energy manipulation technology they demonstrated could revolutionize our power systems, our medical technology, everything. This shouldn't be about weapons." "Easy to say when you're not responsible for national defense," the general replied coldly. Dr. Reed raised a hand to calm the tension. "Both perspectives have merit. The question is, do we trust these beings? Can we verify their claims about these Void Seekers? Our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual energy signatures near the orbit of Saturn," Director Carter reported, pulling up images on the main screen. "These appeared 2 days ago and don't match any known phenomenon." Sam studied the images. That could be anything. Solar flares, instrument malfunction. He was interrupted by Paul suddenly gasping and clutching his head. Everyone turned to look as Paul's eyes widened in apparent pain. "Paul." Olivia moved quickly to his side. "What's happening?" "They're reaching out," he managed to say through gritted teeth. "All of them, all over the world." Director Carter's phone chimed with an urgent alert. She checked it, her face paling. "We're receiving reports from all our monitoring stations. The specimens are activating simultaneously worldwide." On cue, the facility lights flickered. The main screen switched to a live feed of the lab, where all 4 specimens were now floating above their containment units, pulsing with intense light. "It's happening again," Paul whispered. His eyes rolled back as he slumped in his chair. General Wilson reached for his sidearm. "Is this an attack?" "No," Olivia said firmly. "It's a warning." Paul spoke again, but his voice had changed. Deeper, resonant, almost mechanical. "The Void Seekers have crossed the threshold of your outer planets. They move faster than your detection systems can track. You have 7 days before first incursion." The room erupted in chaos. Military officers shouted orders into phones while scientists frantically discussed possibilities. Dr. Reed approached Paul cautiously. "If what you say is true, What exactly are we facing? Paul's eyes opened, glowing faintly with the same light as the specimens. Extinction, unless you accept our help. But know this, once the bond is formed, it cannot be undone. Humanity's path will forever be altered. General Wilson's face hardened. That sounds like a threat. Not a threat, Paul replied, his voice still not entirely his own. A reality. Choose alliance or face the void alone. The facility lights flickered again as Paul collapsed forward onto the table, the glow fading from his eyes. We need to decide, Director Carter said into the stunned silence. Do we trust them? Olivia looked from Paul to the screen showing the glowing specimens. I think the real question is, can we afford not to? The massive screen in the facility's command center displayed a real-time feed from NASA's Deep Space Telescope. A strange distortion was visible near Jupiter's orbit, a ripple in space that shouldn't exist according to any known physics. It's accelerating, reported the young technician monitoring the feed. Estimated arrival in Earth's orbit, 6 hours. Director Carter turned to the assembled team. We're out of time. We need to make a decision now. The past 4 days have been filled with heated debates, emergency meetings with world leaders, and frantic preparations for what might come. Paul had recovered from his collapse but remained changed, more focused, speaking with unusual clarity about things he couldn't possibly know. I'll do it, Paul said now, stepping forward. I'll establish the full neural link. General Wilson shook his head. Too risky. We still don't know their true intentions. What choice do we have? Olivia countered. The Void Seekers are real. They're coming, and our weapons will be useless against them. Sam, who had remained skeptical throughout, finally spoke up. The energy readings from Jupiter match exactly what the specimens predicted. Whatever's coming, it's not natural. Dr. Reed nodded. The President has authorized the neural link attempt. All major world governments have been informed and have agreed to this course of action. The preparation was brief. There was no time for extensive protocols or safety measures. Paul sat in a chair in the center of the lab, surrounded by all 4 specimens, which now floated freely, no longer contained. Neural interface will initiate in 30 seconds, Dr. Fisher announced, monitoring Paul's vital signs. Olivia approached Paul and squeezed his hand. Be careful. Paul nodded, his expression serene. I was always meant for this. From the moment I encountered them in the Arctic, this was the path. The countdown reached 0. The specimens began to orbit around Paul, moving faster and faster until they became a blur of light. The light intensified, enveloping Paul completely. Inside the cocoon of light, Paul felt his consciousness expanding beyond the confines of his physical body. This time, there was no resistance, no fear, just a sense of connection so profound it defied description. He saw the universe through new eyes, the vast network of the luminous assembly spanning galaxies, their crystalline forms mere anchors for beings that existed primarily as patterns of energy and thought. And he saw the Void Seekers, dark, hungry entities that consumed the energy of stars and living beings alike, leaving empty husks where vibrant worlds once existed. In the command center, everyone watched in awe as the light around Paul pulsed and then shot upward, passing through the ceiling as if it were immaterial. Similar beams of light were reported worldwide, all shooting skyward. What's happening? General Wilson demanded. They're creating the shield, Olivia realized, using Paul as the conduit. On the Space Telescope feed, they watched as a shimmering field of energy began to form around Earth's atmosphere. The distortion near Jupiter had resolved into a dark, ominous shape that defied description. Neither ship nor creature, but something in between. As it approached Earth, it encountered the energy shield. The resulting collision sent ripples of light across the planet's sky, visible to everyone below. In the lab, Paul's cocoon of light finally dissipated. He stood slowly, steadier than anyone expected. His eyes now held a subtle shimmer that hadn't been there before. It's done, he said simply. The first wave has been repelled. First wave, General Wilson questioned. They will return, but we have time now. Paul's voice carried a new authority. The Luminous Assembly has established a permanent presence through me and others like me around the world, those who were compatible. Others? Olivia asked, surprised. 12 humans across the globe who encountered the specimens. We are now the bridge between humanity and the Assembly. 6 months later, Olivia stood beside Paul on a platform at the United Nations. As Earth's newly appointed ambassador to the Luminous Assembly, she was about to address representatives from every nation. The world had changed dramatically. The energy technology shared by the Assembly had already transformed power grids worldwide. Medical breakthroughs using crystalline technology were curing diseases thought incurable. Is this really the right path? Olivia whispered to Paul. Binding our future to beings we barely understand. Paul smiled, the subtle glow in his eyes brightening slightly. They understand us better than we understand ourselves. That's why they chose you as ambassador. Your skepticism balances my connection. As Olivia stepped up to the podium, she glanced at the small crystalline pendant she now wore, a gift from the Assembly. It pulsed warmly against her skin, reassuring. Yet in quiet moments, she still wondered about the rigid reaction Paul had shown that first day in her lab. Recognition, they had called it. But recognition of what? A compatible mind, or a useful tool? The alliance was formed, humanity's path forever altered, but the true nature of their cosmic partnership remained to be discovered, and Olivia was determined to uncover it, one crystalline secret at a time.